And we're supposedly live.
Yep, we're live. Live and prime on Charlie's channel. That's not my channel. That's your Charlie's channel.
Supposedly. I can't see us yet, but hey, we'll wait.
Wait, I've got... I should put... Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, there we go. I can see us now. So, hi everyone. My name is Charlie, and this is... where are you? There! This is Charlie, and today we are here with the second edition of our Literally Doris Readalong live shows, this time around for Indisputably Doris and Doris Ahoy. We managed to sync it up eventually somehow. We both got books. These are the second and the third books in the Our Doris series, which...
For those of you watching in the future, links in the description.
Links in the description. And they are the books, what I wrote, following... Hello, Richard. Following Mrs. Doris Copeland, atomic housewife and owner of a rock bun recipe that can make even the most secure dentures shudder. All told from the point of view of her long-suffering husband, Harold.
Hey, Richard. How are you, Richard? Tell us in the comments how you doing. We'll wait for him to reply. How are you doing? That's what we should start with. Say how we're doing, and then we can wait for Richard to reply. So how are you, Charlie?
Oh, I'm fine. I am currently off work for the week. And whilst I didn't get away to Whitby, I have visited various places throughout Cheshire and Derbyshire, today being Bakewell. Fantastic.
Yay, Richard, yay. Yeah. You said you visited to say Charlie's been on holiday this week and you've gone to bookshops, haven't you?
Yes. Didn't buy anything in Crewe on Tuesday because I was abstaining, waiting for the women's prize announcement next week. And then in Bakewell today, I went to a second-hand bookshop. And then I went to a charity shop. Then I went to another charity shop. Then
we give an exclusive about one of the books you bought.
I don't have any of them with me.
But you can say one of them.
I can't even remember the title. Can you?
Yes, The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay.
There you go. See, even Charlie remembers better than me. Yes, but
that was... I want to read it, Charlie.
Read it. I wish you'd said. Well, I wish I knew. I wish I'd known because there were 2 copies at the shop.
No.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't second. That one wasn't second hand. This is just a little independent bookshop in the centre of the town, and called Maxwell's Books, and they had 2 copies there, and I think they were $3.99 each.
Oh, okay.
So there you go. All you've got to do is you just have to get on a train, get to Bakewell, get to Maxwell's.
That's easy.
You could visit Chatsworth too.
Yeah. Hey, Kelly, how are you? Lovely.
Oh, are you? Okay, things are appearing to you. Oh, nope, yeah, they're not appearing to me yet. Things must be going a bit slow for me. I'm not seeing that comment, but
yeah, Kelly.
Hello, Kelly.
How are you, Kelly? How are you doing? Tell us in the comments below how you're doing. How's your week been, darling?
So yes, how's your week been, Charlie?
Yes, it's been. I feel like this is the first week because obviously this Charlie has been fatigued for the last month because of blooming COVID, but this is the first week where I felt almost human, I would say. Dare I say it? Can I ever say it? So yeah, and today I had a lovely day, and I went for a cup of tea with one of my friends, and it accidentally turned into which does happen with me, a 4-hour. We had to end up having breakfast and lunch together, which was very nice. Which does happen, as you know. As you know.
Well, the mother and I didn't get to breakfast together, but we did lunch together.
Oh, what did you have for lunch?
Oh, well, just regular pub grub. Yeah. We went to we originally intended to go to the High Peak bookstore, as I told you, but the queue for the cafe was coming out the door. And so we will, because we also wanted to get to Bakewell and we were aware of what the time was and how long it would take to get there. We decided we'd just go back another time because it's still, quite a distance from my house to get to the High Peak bookstore. But I do recommend, if anyone ever gets the opportunity, if you're ever in the Peak District, get yourselves there.
You never know. I mean, Richard, because I know Kelly's is from the US. Is Richard from the US as well, or is Richard from the UK? I don't know. Do we know? Richard, where are you from? Are you from the UK or US, or are you else globally?
Everybody has to remember,
I don't need to give a specific address. Obviously, we're not trying to,
No, I don't have time for that. But everyone has to remember, I'm also really terrible at geography. For years, I thought Ellesmere Port was in Spain.
Oh, Richard's from Darlington.
Oh, see, now the messages are coming through. They all just appeared at once. There we go. I can see them now. Hello, everybody.
So, how are you? Did you guys end up reading Indisputably, Doris? It doesn't matter if you haven't. We can. Oh, she's so lovely. Yes. Did any of you guys go? I'm doing it back to front. Me and Charlie are really rubbish at being back to front, aren't we, Charlie? We try, but
we weren't set up for this life.
No, we're not good at being back to front. So, have any of you guys read Indisputably, Doris? Because you don't need to worry if you haven't, because we won't be giving any spoilers. Are we not giving spoilers? You said no spoilers.
I managed to talk about this book without spoilers for years. We will be able to do that. However, if your question does contain a spoiler, that is fine, because the book has been out for a while. Well, there you go. Richard is still on the first Doris book, so
you don't need to worry, because we're not going to give spoilers like for the end of Doris. We will be talking this. We can talk about this without ruining the first one. There are ways.
We are trained in this, Richard. We have been having to be tactful about this for years, so we will not spoil your reading of Doris.
For those of people watching in the future, timey-wimey stuff, you can read Indisputably Doris without having read Doris at all. So this can be read. These can all be read separately. Well, kind of. You get more benefit reading them together, but you can read them.
Well, it depends on what order you read it as well. I can remember a few years ago, somebody read Indisputably Doris before they read the first Doris book, and they liked Doris in Indisputably Doris, went back and read Our Doris, and I don't know whether it's still there, but it was something along the lines of, where is this character that I enjoyed? Where is... And I was like, they're the same person. But then part of me was also really thrilled, because I thought, well, clearly this shows some character growth then, that she liked Doris in Indisputably Doris, but she absolutely hated her in Our Doris.
I think, though, because of what happens in the first book, again, no spoilers, I think she does go on a little bit of a journey, and then in the second book, she's sort of, I think as well, it does show her softer side, because I've got to be really careful, but there are going to be things that we talk about. Actually, no, do you know what? Richard said we can give spoilers. We're not going to give like spoilers that's going to ruin the book, but oh yeah, Richard loves Doris. Yeah.
No, well, the thing is let's just let's dive straight in there. Go for it. So
we're skirting around the subject. So tell us what Indisputably Doris is about, Charlie.
Indisputably Doris, following the events of Our Doris, she is now fighting for the position of chairwoman of the Partridge Muse Women's Institute. She's also doing this whilst now working at a charity shop, and she has taken on this almost mentor role for a young woman called Erin. And throughout this book, you don't really see many of the antagonists that were in Our Doris. I specifically chose to avoid including specific characters.
This talking was about Janice Dooley here. This is what you're...
I'm talking about Janice Dooley of Little Street and Violet Grey, because I felt like they had a lot of space in Our Doris, and I wanted to see... Well, for me, going back and just to mention my rereading of Our Doris and then reading this, and reading them so closely together, it was surprising to me as a reader, as opposed to as a writer, to be how close Doris seems to be to Pandra. in Our Doris and how many times she gets mentioned. I mean, if I'd actually read Our Doris more, I would have. Well, I did notice the number of boyfriends I gave her in the first book, and yet in Indisputably Doris, I only mentioned Derek, and I ended up having to include this line about why Pandra is now back with Derek. And that was all because I hadn't read the first book in so long. I didn't realize I gave her this long list of different men. And that was all because I just kept forgetting who Pandra was with. So I never went through and like continuity edited this thing and thought, okay, she's with someone called Jeff here. She's with Derek here. She's with somebody. There's someone with a name beginning with Al in there at one point. Linton. Who the flaming heck is Linton? But I did want to, in Indisputably Doris, it's a lot more different because she is now fighting somebody who she has considered a friend. And even at the start of Indisputably Doris, she is, something happens, they've had a row, and even though they've had this row, she still invites her in for a cup of coffee.
Yeah, but that's like who Doris is.
So
like she would always invite them. Like I can't see her even like her not her enemies, but like Violet, she would have invited in. Like I'm sure there was times when she was pissed off with Violet and she invited her in. So can I say that?
Yeah, no, there were times where because she didn't want people overhearing her. So yeah, but the way it's presented in Indisputably Doris is hopefully for me closer to her inviting a friend in, as when it came to Violet, she was always inviting somebody in who she was worried about her social standing, which she throughout this book doesn't have that worry.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of Indisputably Doris and the writing of it, it was a more difficult book to write, really, because when it came to Our Doris, I had been successful with it, really. Great success, actually, more than any independent author could usually hope for. I just squandered all the money I made from it. But I was getting invited to author panels with traditionally published authors. I've talked about this before. Hello, Emily. And I was being invited back to libraries. There's even somebody who's written a history of Sandbach Town Hall. And because I did an event there, my name is now in a history book.
Aww.
I know. It's the time that they didn't vet who they were inviting to give the awards to children and invited an erotica writer.
I remember you saying
yes. So that is actually written down in the history books now.
That cracks me up so
much. But when it came to Indisputably Doris, I felt like there was so much that I wanted to talk about. And originally, this book had a completely different trajectory and a completely different ending. Yeah. And I wasn't really going to follow the events that had been in the first book. And it's still episodic, like the first book. Each one has a different story through it. But I think there is more of a through line with this book as well, because this is the book where before this book, I took a huge break from writing. I tell everybody about the period of unfathomable sadness where certain things were going on where I just couldn't write. And so I took a break for about 4 or 5 months, but that was me actually physically having made the decision not to write. I probably hadn't been writing for about a year at that point.
Yeah.
So when I came back to writing, and I was writing it all longhand, and there's videos documenting this on my channel, I was writing with a pen and paper every single night, and I'd specifically chosen to include some darker themes because I was looking at Victoria Wood and I was looking at Last of the Summer Wine and I was looking at all these comedies that I'd said that I really enjoyed before and thinking, well, I want to discuss things that are a bit more important to me. And so that's why, to include a spoiler here, Alf ends up getting mugged.
Oh, yeah. But it's like, that doesn't it's something that happens, but it doesn't, in terms of the plot of the main plot, it doesn't.
Yeah, in terms of the main plot, it's not to do with the main plot, but it's one of those discussions that I think that in the first book, there is this case of, like, I still think that Indisputably Doris is funny, but I think that in terms of Our Doris, it's a bit more flippant. And I think that in this one, it is a bit more grounded in reality because there are some very serious things happening to
And
people.
I guess because, again, we're not going to go into spoilers about this because I know, like, Kelly obviously might want to, like, Kelly, like, to let us know what, like, you can all talk about things that you want to talk about. We'll talk about what you guys want to talk about. So, but like going on from the mugging does relate. And again, I'm not going to spoil it. I feel like what happens, obviously, this is probably what was your plan. I'm going to ask you, was this your plan? The thing that happens to Alf, and then there's something that happens to Doris at the end of the book, which is a spoiler, and I won't say it because we don't want to ruin the books for Richard. It makes the two characters of Alf and Doris kind of connect. Obviously, they have a moment, they sort of connect. Was that obviously intentional? How was... I mean, I know obviously Kelly will know what we're talking about. Emily knows what we're talking about.
I did want them to connect more because throughout the writing of this one, I kept thinking, which character could I pull in to do this? So I can't remember what the chapter's called.
Emily will know. Emily, if you're here, you can help us. You know the book. Emily, my sister Emily from Nova Novels, give your channel a plug, Emily, knows these books inside out.
I'm sure that it's educating Erin. And Alf loses his wedding ring playing a game of dominoes. And originally, that scene...
And you guys, Richard, you would love that chapter because I don't know, we said that Janice Julie doesn't appear. Well...
But originally, this was a different character. And
no. He lost the thing to?
He lost the ring to a different character that we'd never met before. And I wrote it, and the entire time I was just like, it's too much of an introduction. You know, there's no need to introduce so many new characters. And that was the thing I was having, like, with the lack of Alf and Edith, because I was also like, these are their two closest friends. And like when I read Our Doris this time around, I felt like it was there a lot. There does, like, I don't really show them being friends at all. And so in this book, I really wanted there to be more of a focus on that. And I also, I have to say, I didn't write the scene with Alf thinking about the scene with Doris later on. All right, Emily. Bye.
That's what I was like. Oh, bye, Emily. Love you lots. Night, Thomas as well, and Mia as well. I love them lots. My niece and nephew. So I was like, Charlie is a I'm going to be honest. I was like, Charlie is a genius because what you've done there, wrong hand.
Yeah.
What you've done there with writing about Alf means that him and Doris connect here right at the end of the book. I was like, Charlie's a genius. Did you think that, Kelly? And also, if you're still here, Richard, you need, honestly, you'll be so excited because it's so good.
But it wasn't intentional at first. It was something that happened as I was writing, and I was wondering, how do I get Doris over this hill?
Yeah.
And I was looking back and I was like, oh, that's how you do it. And so there was a connection there in the end. And I was glad of it, because something else that had happened at the end of Our Doris was this revelation that doesn't really make too much sense in the grand scheme of things, but it is when Alf tells Harold off because Harold was raised in a different class to him and Doris, and it's this revelation that hasn't really come out until the end of Doris. And that was something that I wanted to explore as well, this idea that Doris is the way she is because she's always, there is this worry, really, what if she ended up back there, which doesn't really get explored much in Indisputably, Doris, but you do learn a lot more about when it comes to the final book, Royally Doris.
Yeah.
Where I really had to go into the history of the family.
Yes.
Oh
my gosh, it just gets so much better from here. Well, I say that because I just love every bit I've read. Like, I don't know how you guys are feeling, but like every bit I've read, I just was like, it's like a little treat. Like, I really feel like these books are like they're very different, like you said. So I can see, like, when you say different people say different things about the books if they come in at different points. Like, yes, they are very different, but each of them are just like little. I know what it is. They're like, it's like a tub of celebrations where you've got like they're all like this. All this. Do you know what? Do you guys know what? Actually, US people, do you know what celebrations are? I don't know whether you have celebrations. A chocolate tub of sweets.
A mixed tub of candy.
Okay, yeah. And you've all got different ones in there, and obviously they're all different, but they just are just such a treat. Like, all of them are such a treat, and they just work so well together. And I just think, yes, they are different, but yeah, they're just so wonderful. So yeah, we're thankful to Charlie for writing them, aren't we, people?
Well, it's very kind.
Sorry, interrupt you.
No, it's fine. We all know it's very difficult for Charlie to take compliments. So that was it really. And do you want? Oh, do we talk about the look now? Or do you guys
want to talk actually? Because Richard might want to know. Oh, here we go. Richard's got in some comments. Should we read some comments? My major laughs come from me trying to speak the local accent. Oh, Charlie. Richard, sorry. I can't talk. I told you guys, honestly, I'm tired tonight.
Yeah, that's always been one of the things with me when people come to me afterwards and they'll tell me that I hear your voice when I'm reading this. And I'm like, well, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, so Charlie mentioned to me before we came on air about Doris's look to Harold.
Because the look, you guys will know, like, I feel like the look is in itself almost like a character itself, isn't it? Like, that's not just me, is it? Like,
but it has to be specific to Doris as well.
Obviously, yes. Yeah, no, obviously, very specifically.
But I only say that because the first two books had different editors, so I can't remember which one it was. I can't remember whether it was Lindsay Watson or Joy Winkler who said this, but I attributed a look once to a different character, and they said, no, this is a Doris thing.
Yes.
So they didn't mind when it was like Angela giving a look to rival her mothers because they were related, similarly with Theo. But there is only one way that I can explain the look, and I have to ask for some forgiveness to a certain person in my life who I know for what I'm about to say. But when...
Are they going to be watching, though?
I don't think they're watching, but, just in case. When they and their husband might get into a little bit of a falling out, they give their husband what they refer to as the Scarborough warning. And so the look comes from this thing where it's just a look from a wife to a husband, and he doesn't have to, he just knows that's the look where he's incensed her. There are loads of different looks between husbands and wives, but the look in Doris is always, you've done something wrong here.
I know our Harold always quakes in his boots, like, when it happens. Like, he does. He's like quaking as he's like telling the story. You can feel him shivering. Like, he's terrified.
But there are some, there are different looks where there's like, sometimes I'll say, and she gave me this look. It's not the one where she's gonna raising the furies of seven hells. That's one of them. But yes, the look is just
iconic.
It's a Doris thing.
Iconic. The look. It's iconic.
Oh, there we go. Richard says that he does the look.
Doris Stan.
without spoiling, love the writing showing the friendship between the four. Thank you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
The friendship is just gorgeous. I just love it so much.
it's
Should we talk about that a little bit as we're on it, as it's kind of like? So how did like you said you about the writing of it, and you said it was more important in the Indisputably Doris. Obviously Richard hasn't read it yet, but
well, it really did stem from this. I needed people in this book who knew Doris and Harold more than anybody else, and because of what's going on, and Doris is trying to kind of rally troops, and she's aware that maybe people aren't getting on with her as much as they once were. There is, as I said, there's a lot of scrambling about on Doris's part, and she's maybe not handling things as well as she was in Our Doris, which sees divides in their relationships really, and then we get to see them being angry with one another, and we get to see them being happy for one another and conciliatory together. And this does happen a few times throughout the book, which culminates in a scene that we'll talk about in a minute. And so it was really important for me to write the friendship, because I also think about a lot of the elderly people I know. And I think with Our Doris, I related a lot more to people I'd seen in my own family, where in my head it seemed like they didn't really see anybody but the two of them.
Yeah.
And also because really that was what the main focus of the first book was. Whereas with Indisputably Doris, we now had space to branch out and talk about more.
Explore their world a bit bigger, like expand their world, yeah.
So that's why Alf and Edith got more of a role in this book. And I think that it was important to almost show, who their supporters are and how they do actually navigate through the world.
I feel like you. Oh yeah, we'll look at the comments again.
Oh yeah, no, sorry. Go on. Say what you were going to say.
I feel like you, because was it tricky, because like obviously Harold and Alf are very different, and I don't know how to express what I was saying here, but I love like Alf as the characterization of Alf. I don't know how you guys think. I just love him so much. Like Alf is and he's so different. He's so different to Harold, but in some ways he isn't. In some ways he isn't, because obviously they're friends, and it's the same. Like you can see their similarities and things, but they are very distinguishably different. Like I don't know, how did you do that? Like because it was obviously like that's in characterization, but how do you go about doing that?
I can't lie. Sometimes it was just pure theft from Last of the Summer Wine with Clegg and Compo. But other times, I think it's just me being an incredibly sensible person, injecting that sort of person into Harold, and me knowing a lot of farmers and the ragamuffin types, and injecting that energy into Alf. But also knowing that these people who can seemingly be wastrels and they don't really care about going out always looking incredibly sensible and everything. They're just who they are, and people get this weird impression of them that they're exceptionally common and they're not really their sort. But then, like in this scene where we're talking about, they're the ones who know exactly what to say to work things out.
Just to read that. Yeah. Yes, Charlie. I did think that was the perfect person. Yeah.
And then Richard just furthering that he's going to pose.
I'm not on Facebook, so if Charlie gets a picture of you, Richard, I want to see it. So Charlie will have to share it with me. I want to see it. Richard, if you do the look, I want to see it. So Charlie you have to make Charlie promise that Charlie will share the look.
Kelly is halfway through Doris Ahoy. How are you finding it so far, Kelly? And then
are you enjoying it? Because again, it's quite different. It's fun.
Yes, the look is a character.
It is. Thank you, Kelly.
But,
I'm not going to say any words today. Like seriously, you guys.
It's fine. So and then I just referenced it, so I'll talk about it whilst we wait for a response about how Kelly's getting on with Doris Ahoy. So this friendship, And as I say, that throughout the book we discuss Alf, Edith, and Doris and Harold's friendship, and it all culminates in a big scene. And I was telling Charlie about this. Was it last week we were having this conversation?
I can't remember, Charlie.
Basically, somebody, a writerly acquaintance, revealed that they had finished writing a book.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that they had released their first book after I'd released Our Doris. Bearing in mind I'd taken a break due to sadness. I was so infuriated to see that.
You guys are going to love this. Before Charlie said it, you're going to love this.
That I wrote 21,000 words over a period of 3 days to finish writing the novel. So that's the last 3 tales in Indisputably Doris. And whenever I read them back, I cannot help myself but recognize all that anger. And that anger does appear in the chapter entitled Baked.
I think you can see it, like, only because you told me, though, because you told me as I was reading, I was like, oh my God.
I can't help but notice it, because then you move into the next chapter, which is Intervention, which deals with the fallout of that.
But you utilised it so beautifully,
because
Charlie.
Even then, I didn't stop being insulting. Like, even when Doris was trying to stop, like, those final 21,000 words are just 21,000 words of insults. Like, some of my favourite insults are in those 21,000 words.
It's not that. It's not like.
But I was reading it myself. I was like, I can't believe that Doris said this. And then you move into the final chapter, and I think the final chapter, you can just see where Charlie was calming down a bit. Because suddenly Doris is like, oh, do you know what? I don't really care too much. All right, then. You get on with it.
We're not going to spoil it. Again, we're not going to spoil Indisputably Doris, but I don't know how to say it without saying it. Like, can we cover? I don't know what to like.
What are you trying?
Like the word I'm thinking of. Actually, I'll just type it in the message, and then you can like. This is like friends. This is what friends do.
Yeah, we're just going backstage for a second.
Not really. Can I say that? Like, I'll take that. Because of.
Oh yeah, you can say that.
Yeah, but so she's going through a certain amount of trauma because there's something that happens towards the end of the book, which Kelly obviously knows about. So don't worry, Kelly, if your internet's going in and off. Like, join in as much as you can. We love you. You know you're okay here. Sorry, but yeah. So she's going through a certain amount of. And Emily, this is a bit that Emily, my sister, particularly, again, sorry to say, talk about Emily. She mentioned this to me, and this is why I wanted to talk to you about it. So I won't spoil what happens. Something happens towards the end of the book, and she's left. So Doris is left with a certain amount of trauma, which is why I feel like it links what we were saying about the linking up with Alf and his trauma, because they sort of there's a beautiful scene with them because they connect, because Alf sort of helps Doris. But yeah, so was that difficult to write? Like, tell us about like the sensitivity of all of that, because you did do it beautifully, and I feel like you did it. You didn't like shy away from what she was going through. She suffers. She's like, again, not telling you guys, but she's like, like I said, she's sort of recovering. She has to sort of recover from that, and she's still recovering from it from Doris Ahoy, isn't she? Really?
Yeah. So from that point onwards, she is still recovering from it, even into Royally Doris as well.
Yeah.
Because
you don't like.
Doris Ahoy bridges the gap between the two, and the only well, I can talk about Royally Doris next month, but it was just the way that characters work in my mind. I could tell from the beginning of Royally Doris that she still wasn't over what had happened in Indisputably Doris, so that's why. So that's why, for maybe the first 10,000 words, she's still suffering, but. I think that, again, it does just come from watching how Victoria Wood dealt with things, and how Roy Clark dealt with things in Last of Us and Wine. As I told you, there's a scene in Royally Doris that was very much inspired by me going back and watching specific episodes of comedies that had dealt with some heavier topics, which led to the most depressing February that I have ever had in my life. Which, again, we'll talk about next month. So when it came to...
When you read Royally Doris, when you guys get to Royally Doris, oh my God, it's so worth it. It's like, if you love the first 3 books, Royally Doris is my favorite, which I shouldn't say because I love all of them so much. And I don't like, maybe I will feel differently when I reread.
No, I'm glad that you liked Royally Doris because it's been my most expensive book to release. Yeah, so the sensitivity and all of that does just come from having researched how to try and get this scene right. And like, I admit that when it came to a specific scene, I did very much worry that it could come across as slapstick when I first wrote it, not the way that it appears in the book.
Yeah. You haven't done it slapstick at all. Like,
no,
the thing that happens, which again, we're not going to talk like specifically.
But at first I did. So I made a concerted effort not to joke with that. And even then, when they start making the jokes and making light of it, it's more of a case of trying to lighten the mood because everybody's so concerned about what's happened.
Yeah, because they're trying to help Doris. They're doing it in a way, like in the way that they always communicate with each other. They're doing it in a sort of, like, I would say, supportive way. To try and sort of like, because obviously it really this, I feel like this is another thing I think I wrote notes on it, and it's one of the first times that you kind of, I know you do see vulnerability in the first book. I'm sure, Richard, you will agree with me with that, but I feel like, again, it's a very rare time when you see her very, very vulnerable. And was that important to you? Like, obviously, again, as part of all of that.
No, it was important to me. It was, I said to everybody really that my writing of these books kind of changed as to why I was writing them as I went along. And at first it was because I wanted to see more older characters represented in fiction, and I wanted them to be the main characters. I didn't want them to be caricatures. I wanted them to have the story. And then when it came to Indisputably Doris, I was like, well, who is Doris? And then when we get to Royally Doris, the way that Harold was speaking, and I remember having a conversation with Joy. I was writing it during lockdown in 2020, and I went to her house and I said to her, I just don't understand why Harold is so angry. And she said, well, maybe he needs to be. Just keep writing it and eventually you'll figure out why. And I did. And I think reading Indisputably Doris again reminded me of why Harold was angry at the start of Royally Doris, which I'll talk about without spoiling it, which was simply because I've discovered that he was just exceptionally protective of Doris, even though she isn't the way he is. And so when he comes back to Partridge Mews and certain things have happened and he's worried that things are going to end up being just like they've always been, I realised, oh, that's why he's angry. But with Royally Doris, it was more, why have these two characters stuck together for so long? What is it that makes them work? What have they been through? Whereas with this one, it very much was about figuring out who Doris was behind all of the looks and the barbed comments.
And like you said, so it shows the vulnerability. And before we just go to the comments quick, Charlie.
So I think this was the next one from Callie, which I think was about Doris Ahoy. Love the style of writing. Feel bad for our arrows having the tie. Yes, no, that is rather mean on my part. I agree. The characters, the looks priceless. Thank you. But I just realised I've done that thing that Charlie told me off for again, revealing talking to each other in the comments.
Oh.
I didn't realise. I'm sorry.
If you guys remember from last time, I know.
I tell you, I am no good with technology.
No, like, Do you know what? It's cute. You guys are lovely. I like it when we like seeing you interact with each other as well. Don't we, Charles?
We do. We do.
Because this is a space where it's like it's the thing I love about our, like I say, our live shows. Like it's like I'm on your channel, so thank you very much. But the thing I love most about like it's like with you guys, I feel like we're like with friends and like chatting to you guys in the comments and like talking to Charlie. Obviously, Charlie is my friend. Obviously, aren't you? This is where you say nice things about me.
Oh, well, I think that was legally required.
Yes, it is. So it's like, yeah, so obviously, so seeing you guys chat to each other, see like all of it, it's really lovely. Yeah, it's a safe space here. It's always fun, and we enjoy it so much, don't we, Charlie?
We do. It's
other than just talking about your books, which obviously is the most important.
Well, I do like that because as I've said before, in terms of Indisputably Doris, one of the sad things that happened with this book was I ended up feeling when I wrote this book, oh well, well done. Now, did you make that from scratch, or is this just?
I bet Edward did, because Edward bakes. Edward cooks amazing stuff. Like I've seen.
I need to know: was it made from scratch, or?
I bet it was. I'm going to bet it was. Edward, tell us: was your sticky
that word? I can't even say it out. Sticky.
You say it, Charlie. So I don't have to.
Toffee pudding.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. So because yeah, tell us. I bet it was because if you guys well, I don't know whether Edward wants you to all follow him on Instagram, but on his stories, he often cooks. Yes, see, I told you.
Yeah,
see,
made from
scratch. Amazing
at my table.
He does, yeah.
Yeah. Now there is a. I can't. Oh, that was it. It was in the Christmas thing, wasn't it? That's yes. Why I mentioned. That's why I meant when I mentioned Nigella in something. It was at Christmas.
Yeah, I remember that.
So yes, so with Indisputably Doris, I was feeling really proud of that book. Obviously because I'd finally managed to finish writing it, and once again, this is all documented on my channel. I'm sorry for taking you back over things that happened 5 years ago, but it was 5 years ago.
It's good to be fresh.
And so I booked all of these events. It was the year that I had the most overtime at work because I had there were staff illnesses and what have you. And I was trying to pass my driving test. And I had to, my final driving lesson before my exam, I had to have the instructor, I said to him, can we drive to Sandbach Library?
Yeah.
And then I get out with all of my books because I've got an event after my lesson.
Sorted it all out.
But I was like, and so I was like, and I was also saying to him, also, I have to pass next week because I've got so many events the following week. I have no one to drive me and I can't get the bus to some of them. So I was just lucky. But anyway, I did my driving lesson, and this Sandbach Library had always been good to me. They were the people who they gave me the author panel where the room was full. I just always been very successful there. So much so that they'd anticipated that too and filled the room. I went out and bought chocolates and a card for the library, and then 3 people turned up.
Oh no.
And that was also the time that someone spent about 5 minutes arguing with me because she told me that one of the characters in my book was like somebody from Coronation Street, and I must have been inspired by her. And I said, well, I was born in 92 and this character left Coronation Street in the mid-70s, so I've never seen them.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah. And I should have taken that as some sort of omen then. So then I officially launched the book at the writers group on the Thursday, and I baked tons of cakes, and it was fine. It was great. I had to shout at one of our members because he decided to clip his fingernails whilst I was reading.
Oh, Charlie, no.
But yeah, all these things should have been omens. On the night that I performed it in another town, somebody was found murdered. I went to, it was just a real. This is a cursed book.
It's not like you guys. How much do you love this book? Like, Kelly, tell Charlie how much you love this book, just because he wants it. Like, seriously, he needs to hear this.
So
Like,
despite the
such a
fact
cute
that
book.
I planned all these events, so few people came to my actual events that I still have about 70 copies of this under my bed. In fact, this one here, and yours might be as well, does yours say in the back what date it was printed on?
I mean, yes.
What does it say?
24th of August, 2017.
Right, so yes, you've got the same edition as me. These have been updated. I did submit it for a prize that it didn't even get longlisted for, which is where the full proper grammatical edit and everything happened, because it was at Sandbach Library that I realised an entire line had been deleted from this edition. So there's that. But yes, it just... I will say, though, that this book not doing so well is one of the things that
makes you love it.
Say, well, that, and also led to me going, well, I can just write whatever I want then. And so I went off and wrote about 30,000 words of the children's book, which still isn't finished. And well, actually, that was October till February.
Can you give these people like can you link like the title for like the charity book? Can you say the title of it?
I'm not leaking it yet. We're we're keeping that one in.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm not going to say nothing.
Yeah, but I was like, well, I'll just write what I want then, and eventually I ended up writing Alice Valentine, and that's what I wrote next, even though it didn't come out until after Doris Ahoy. And then when I finished An Heir to Murder, I went and wrote Doris Ahoy.
The segue, lovely,
brilliant segue. Originally, I didn't even know whether this was going to be a separate book.
You said you were going to attach it to Royally Doris, weren't you? Because
it was going to be the beginning of Royally Doris, and it wasn't going to be much of a story. It was basically...
I will hold it up here.
For whatever reason, I got it into my head, as much as I like the Christmas specials of comedies and what have you, and all, like all three of the books, apart from this one, have got Christmas in them in some way.
Yeah.
I decided I'd write a summer holiday special.
Which I love, because this is what everybody. So tell the premise of this book to some people that people in the future that do not know, or I don't know. Richard, do you know about the premise of this book? Because or Edward, whoever else is watching.
In this book, Harold and Doris are not in Partridge Mews. Nope. They're on a cruise, traveling around the world, and there is a dance competition. There is a hat club. There's a mysterious woman called Mrs. Veronica Ambrose. And as I wrote it, it just ended up expanding. This is the book that gave us the style that we take on into Royally Doris, which is where there are no marked chapters. It's all just in parts.
It works really well.
And I mean, it's a good job that I didn't include it at the start of Royally Doris, because then Royally Doris would be, 700 pages long. In my mind, I was imagining the Keeping Up Appearances episode when Hyacinth goes on the QE2. Yeah, no, I
remember that episode.
I remember it as well, and I had unfortunately forgotten all about it when I decided to send Doris on a cruise.
Oh, don't worry.
No, but I will tell you the reason that Doris got sent on a cruise. I always knew that she was going to end up on a cruise.
Because she needed a break after everything that happened, surely.
She did need a break, but also because I was still at Weight Watchers when I was writing Indisputably Doris.
Oh, really?
I think I ended... No, I might have finished. It doesn't matter anyway, but there was a woman there who always used to go on cruises.
Oh, really?
But the thing that properly cemented Doris going on a cruise is not where I work now, but on the in the premises I was before, we used to have a husband and wife duo who maybe inspired two people who appear in this book. Sorry, my computer's just making noises. And basically, we have a rota, and they're rotated to come in on certain days. I think only the wife actually came to volunteer. I think the husband just turned up with his iPad. And one day, we used to have a cafe, and we weren't very busy there, so it was fine for them to have done this. They got chatting to to a person in the cafe, and they'd been talking about a cruise, and this person said, "Oh, you should go on P&O Cruises last-minute offers." And they did, and they absconded. She came to me about half an hour before she's due to leave, telling me that she's just been for a lunch with her husband after working in the morning and decided that she's not going to be there for the next 3 months because they've just found a really cheap deal on a cruise.
I love that. So
You love that. I have to find another volunteer.
To be clear, I don't love it for what happened to you in the charity shop. I don't.
But then,
You didn't mean that, Charlie. You know what I meant.
But then, right, gets back from the cruise and tells me that while she's been on the cruise, they have decided that they're moving house. They found a retirement flat on a golf course,
No.
and so she won't be coming back at all.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my god. That's a bit nervy. That's a bit of a nerve, isn't it?
But when they did that, I was like, do you know what? I figured out how Doris and Harold are going to afford this cruise. I know where they're going now.
Yeah, she's given you the main plot line. Well, no, not really. She's given you a device to help you with Doris. There you go.
The fantastic thing is, I can't actually remember what they were called. So I just have to hope that their names aren't the same as the other couple.
If you watched the last live show.
Oh yeah, did I mention about the
Derek? Who is Derek? Was it Derek? No.
Oh, I was talking about Sheila and Ken this time.
Yeah, Sheila Ken.
Yeah.
His actual name was Derek.
That was the other thing I told you about.
His real name was Derek.
Oh yes, that's true.
Can we go to the comments quick?
I
think Richard's written something.
I don't yet have Doris Ahoy. I'm also looking at doing. Yes, that's a very good idea. Do get a copy for when you go on a cruise. And
then take a picture because Charlie would love.
Very short. It will only take about an hour to read.
Charlie would love a picture of this book on a cruise ship. So for his promo, so you know, if you get a picture, you know.
I've done the play since Cruise 2. I didn't until I'd already decided she was going and told everyone in Indisputably Doris. Sounds a bit like Shirley Valentine on a cruise. It could be, you know, she's actually got the husband with her. Well, to be fair, I don't actually know whether she did. I never saw him after that. She just rang me up to tell me that she was moving.
Oh, there you go then.
I'd like to say that's the only time that's ever happened, but it's not.
Some stories. Have you also, if you like, I want to know if any of you guys have got any questions about Charlie's writing, about obviously about the books, about the first book, the second book, and obviously the third book. Charlie can recap anything that you want to. We can go over the first book a little bit, can't we?
Yeah, we can answer any and all questions.
Richard, as you're reading the first book, if you've got any questions about the first book you want to ask Charlie, about anything about writing, anything you guys want to ask Charlie, Charlie's here right now. Ask him away.
But I have just remembered something that Alison wanted to mention about
this.
That's
why I was asking that before we go on to the actual. We can keep talking about.
I saw Percy. And I remembered that with this book, I had to create the complete antithesis to Elf. And so you have Percy, who is.
I know you do see Elf Cross, but not Elf Cross. Harold Cross, but.
Yeah. In this book, you get to see Harold being incredibly grumpy because he's on the cruise and he's developed this friend called Percy. Percy don't call him Harold, he calls him Harry.
Which I love.
And he is on green smoothies, hot yoga. He does the Zumba. He's running around every day.
Completely
And
different. He's a nut job.
but he's also
I say that
creation, because there was part of me that was like, if I ever decided to write something that was properly inspired by Last of the Summer Wine, I need a third man. And I was like, Percy. I was like, I just need Percy and Alf to meet.
Percy was brilliant.
Imagine Alf just biting into a pork pie as Percy's staring at him with a green smoothie. It's just like on the back. All right, instead, he's propping up a smoothie bar with health and fitness freak Percy, a man with an unnatural interest in kale. I don't think I actually ever used the word kale in this book, but I knew that. But yes, I have to say that Percy is along the same lines as a character who you'll meet in An Heir to Murder, who I think I was talking to you about this I was talking to my mother about this the other day. There are certain characters that my characters end up bouncing off of where I don't feel like the book is alive yet.
Yeah.
And they'll turn up and immediately I'm like, okay, they're who it is here. So I'm currently writing the Charity Shop novel, and that's just happened with a character that gets referenced in the Cozy Crime novel. And I think I told you about this. But it happened with Alice's mother in An Heir to Murder, and it happened with Percy in here. Anyway, questions. So, did you work on other novels before the first Doris? And if so, how did you decide that that novel was the one to go for? Do you mean, how did I know that Doris was the one to go for? Yes. Yeah. I did work
on it in the last video, but you can go for it.
I worked on many novels before Doris. The one that I worked on most was a young adult fantasy novel that I also reworked into a screenplay for uni. And when I was in my final year of uni, I was actually sending that off to agents, getting form rejection. Well, no, I wasn't getting form rejections that time. I'd done another round of editing and was now getting personalized rejections. And I got a request for a full manuscript, and I thought, this is it. This is going to be the big times. And I got my entire young adult series planned out as to what was going to happen next and where it was going to go. And I thought, well, that's why I only need a part-time job, really. I'll have this job on the side and I'll have the writing and it'll work really well. And I got rejected for that book a month into working where I was before. And at the time, there weren't really a lot of channels in UK literature for young adult fiction. Now, there's a big market for young adult fantasy fiction over here, but it hadn't really reached here when I was writing it. And so I'd used up every single agent I knew, and I just ended up working on the children's book then. And then out of nowhere, I would write bits of Doris every week for the writers group. People started saying, when will the novel be coming? And I didn't know that it would. And then we had the event at Knutsford Library where Joy had been invited to an author panel. They wanted a male writer, and she told them that she had a friend who had a book coming out in the summer. I didn't, and I ended up having to write the final 6 chapters of Our Doris over a very short period. But I was just lucky to have a lot of people who could read it and beta read it quickly, and I had a friend who chose to edit it as I went,
which is amazing.
And then said to me, I wish you weren't independently publishing this, because this is the most publishable piece that you've ever written. But she did also reveal that she'd never read any of my previous books either, and I was like, well, I wish you'd told me you'd never finished them. And Kelly, I adore this book. I laughed out loud, got a tear in my eye. Also, I battle depression. Indisputably, Doris has brought joy to me and given me courage to come here and chat too much.
You know what? We're so happy you're here with us, Kelly. Like, me and Charlie, aren't we, Charlie? We're so happy you're here with us. Like, I properly honestly, like, you guys know. I mean this. We're so happy you're here. Like, this is like the best. So, thank you so much for coming and joining us and chatting with us.
I hope that you can cope with me allowing Charlie to be the effusive one here, because I was only built for sarcasm. I'm most apologetic.
Charlie is equally grateful as well. I will be the soppy one, but Charlie is grateful for you as well.
Yeah, we've talked about this. She's the kind one. Great, yeah.
I didn't read Edward's
Sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm not as quick. You read it out loud, and then I can.
Great to hear your first book publishing journey. Suckers for turning down your book.
Yes.
I did send it off to a big agent now, who wasn't such a big agent back then. She was first starting out. It was Juliet Mushins, and she rejected it, but it was not a form rejection. And she told me everything that was wrong with the book and why it wouldn't fit in the UK market at the time. And obviously, 20-year-old Charlie was a bit miffed by that, especially because it came at the same time as getting a rejection letter from the BBC that also happened to list everything wrong with the radio play I'd written. But now, 10 years later, it was it was kind of the best thing that someone could have done, because it listed everything that was wrong. And looking back, entirely right. Like, I still have the book, because you used to be able, when you did NaNoWriMo, you could print off a few copies if you finished it. And I read the book now, and it's just awful, because I had this big tendency to, write how you'd see people talk on, like, the Vampire Diaries or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but everyone was kind of talking in jokes, and the story never really went anywhere, and everyone was really talking in circles. Yes. And I was also, like, heavily into this whole show don't tell thing, so I didn't give, like, 50% of the details people needed to know. I was like, well, it's in my head, so we're okay. But then to everybody else, it's just like, oh, the magic seems convenient here.
Yeah.
So no, she was entirely right, and
you've just been on a massive journey then as a writer. It just shows you the journey, like.
And
you talk about that.
Again, if I hadn't had that letter, then I wouldn't have known that I need to, when I write dialogue, actually have that dialogue heading towards somewhere, because I always knew that I could write dialogue. I just didn't recognize that it had to have an aim just as much as every paragraph has to have an aim. Okay. Well, yeah.
Honestly, I loved it so much. It cracked me up too, Kelly.
Yeah, no, we are in agreement. It was a good experience. I can't say that the BBC letter. I've never forgiven the BBC letter, and I don't think I'll forget that one.
No.
But that was because it was a form rejection that they'd sent to however many thousands of people who submitted, but it also talked down their work. So, they could have just sent the form rejection of, I'm sorry you haven't been successful this time, but then to send a list of all the reasons that they might not have chosen something.
That's just terrible.
That was, yeah. And yes, no, I agree with that one. At least they showed it. At least it showed they read your work and took it seriously if they are giving feedback like that. I agree. That's how. It's another way that I also knew that I was on the right track when it came to my writing, because getting form rejections meant that I was improving. It's just if people hadn't. If I hadn't had the opinion I had of publishing at the time, and to be fair, that hasn't really changed, I would just like the same money, that traditionally published people get, and the same marketing and the same ability to get into bookshops. But otherwise, I'm glad I am my own publisher, as I said last time, because there are traditionally published writers I know who want to be able to move genres and stuff, and they're unable to because they've got a contract that says you've got to write this, and they've delivered 4 or 5 books in the last 2 years, and every single time we've gone to the publisher said no.
Yeah, so that's...
And so they're now just having to write and to...
Because you've got Charlie has got so much going on behind the scenes that you guys don't even realize. Like, seriously, like...
Yeah, I feel sorry for Charlie because she just gets to hear about it every week.
I love it.
It's my sounding board now for all of the plans.
No, I love it. Like, you know, I love it.
I feel so sorry for Joy from the writers group as well. And I just said to her last time we were out for coffee, I said, I'm not going to talk about my writing because every single week I've spoken to you now, I've been working on a different project. It's got to be like a waltzer.
So can you guys, so you guys that are watching, like, that have read the books, like, who are your favorite characters? Like, talk to us about all of that stuff, because it's cool, isn't it? Because we're sort of going to be wrapping it up because we've got 25 minutes, but
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, even I can. I think Alf's become a favorite character of mine, though.
And one thing me and Charlie were talking about, so again, this isn't spoiler. We're not going to spoil it, like it's no spoilers, but like obviously you've heard that Alf gets mugged in this book, and obviously you've heard about the him losing the ring.
Oh yes, the ring. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, me and Charlie were like, blooming poor Alf gets picked on.
I sent Charlie a message as soon as I recognised this, because there's something that happens to Alf in Royally Doris.
Yes.
And I had completely forgotten that what happens to Alf in Indisputably Doris had happened. And so I felt incredibly terrible because Alf might have a link to another book that I'm currently writing, which is linked to another series that I'm writing, which reveals certain histories about people in the town. And when I was doing all this, I was like, this man has now had the worst life. And I hate when writers do this. You know, like when you're watching a soap opera and they bring in a really an amiable character who's like the comic relief. And then when they decide they're going to stay in the cast, they give them loads of trauma. I hate when writers do this, and yet I have done it to Alf. This poor man is a... Do you know, I know what's happened to Alf. Everybody else has got to, you know, wait like 7,000 years before I eventually write the book to figure it out for themselves. But my goodness, when I tell you what I realised I'd done to this man, it did make me reconsider and think, do you know what? Maybe I should rewrite all of my plans for the next 6 books, because, yeah, I feel terrible for the way that I've treated Elf.
Oh, bless poor Elf.
Well, actually, I have to say, there are certain things I feel terrible for with the characters of all the series, and there's a lot that I do to characters in Royally Doris where I feel bad for what I did to them. And you get, you know, at the end of March, you lot are all going to know why I felt bad. But
there you go.
I had to wrap some things up, and we had to learn some things about some characters. And unfortunately, that meant reliving some sadnesses. But it's still told with humour. There's still some jokes there. You got to search for them, but they're there.
No, it still is. It's gorgeous.
Anyway, move to this comment. How is your poetry going? And have you read any poetry lately you want to talk about? You can ignore that question if you'd rather keep it to Doris talk. No. Poetry at the... So...
You got to be careful because you go, yeah.
Yeah, so I have been sending poems off again and received a few rejections. And I wrote a poem for the last Poems and Pints that was more... It was inspired by the Wurzels. And the reason that had happened was because I felt like I'd had success with comfortable this Christmas, which I read at the last Poems and Pie, well, the one before Christmas. So I thought I'd write another one which was similar to a song. And that has led to a few more poems for this collection, which is all surrounding farming and my family's background in farming, because as we all know, I'm not the biggest fan of farming. So we've ended up with a few character poems and these poems that are closer to songs.
Which I love. All the ones I've read, guys. Honestly, I love them. They're so cool.
And so I will be at Poems and Pints again this coming Wednesday, which is the 8th, I think. It might be, yeah.
It is the 8th because it's Emily's birthday on the Thursday.
Oh, yes, which is where I'll be reading 2 of the poems. And I have printed off every single one of the poems that I have now written with the intention of self-publishing a poetry collection. But I'll have to get the order correct first.
Yes. That's right.
As Charlie knows, at the moment, I don't know whether I've yet had that poem that feels like it's the final one, but I also don't know whether I've already written that and just had to rejig everything because I've needed more poems for the collection. And currently, don't know whether this is going to be in the collection, but a piece that I am working on is called Greet Them With Your Shotgun.
I can't wait to read that.
You're right. Alf's life has undergone the little life effect. That's amazing.
It's not quite as severe as that, actually. I don't think it's not quite as severe.
To send stuff off. It does, but also I would like some of the kudos of saying this poem appeared in this magazine, because at the moment I am 6 years in of constantly sending out work and only had one poem accepted many moons ago. And I don't know. We will.
How do you cope? So as a writer, how do you cope with all that rejection stuff? How do you feel about all of that, or is it just like part of the course?
As the great Jinx Monsoon says, it's water off a duck's back. For me, when it comes to the poetry, if I get a rejection, I just immediately I'm like, right, well, who are we sending it to next?
Yeah.
So I just
and also poetry is incredibly personal, isn't it? In terms of reading and
it is. And the only poem that I've ever managed to get in a magazine, I did not expect to be the one that they accepted. I thought that I'd got much better ones in the package that I'd sent across, and they picked this one. And then when I was looking back over it, I was like, I can understand why now. But even sometimes as a writer, if you ask any poet, they'll say the one that you think isn't the best is the one that they are going to end up choosing. Yeah. It's what happens all the time. And the one that I got accepted for, it was like, I don't know how you describe it, but I got accepted for the magazine at the same time that Joy got rejected for that magazine. And then I received a rejection for the magazine that she got accepted to, all on the same day. So it's just this huge coincidence there. But you also find that happening a lot as well. Every poet you know, if you are friendly with poets, you are all submitting to the same places. It's one of the reasons I'm struggling to get events at the moment, because everybody's just trying to get out there and continue.
Especially after the lockdown.
Yeah.
And that I guess that'll be something we talk about.
Because it's mostly affected Royally Doris, but
there's loads to talk about with that, though. I can't wait.
There is a lot to talk about with Royally Doris. Sorry, with this comment here. Some days it's nice to get a rejection letter because it's a sign you're a writer, but other times it's crushing. Yeah. Honestly, I'm more shocked when I receive the acceptance messages now, if I ever got them. I've had a few of these, you've been longlisted in the past, which are always nice. Yeah. But I just, I think the one that annoyed me most was that Joy and I both got shortlisted for, I think it was some competition in York, and there were about 95 people on the shortlist. Oh, that's not a shortlist.
Wow.
Like, like you can't go and say, oh, I got. Well, you can say I got shortlisted for this prize, but it's like, yeah, but there were 95 other people. Well, 94 other people there. It's like, tell me where I ranked in that list. If I ranked in the top 10, I'll tell people about it.
Top 20 even.
But when if I could be number 95 out of 95, I don't want to know. Sorry, I end up thinking I sent it to the wrong place. I am looking in the Manc Poetry Library through lots of their mags to look for good fits. Yeah. Another thing you have to look at is, you also have to find when they're open for submissions. There have been so many times I've been caught out because they closed for submissions like a week before I ended up realizing that I could have submitted to them. I'm also one of these people who hates sending stuff to more than one place at a time. So I'm always waiting, like when I say that, I mean, I will have multiple submissions out,
but different poems.
You won't see the same poems on each submission, which sometimes can also worry me because I'm like, well, if they reject this, these people might like it.
And then how do you keep track of all of that? It must be really,
sometimes it's baffling too. I had a friend who got longlisted for a good poetry prize who bemoaned only getting longlisted. Couldn't bear to tell her I didn't make the long list at all. Yes, I have had this happen before as well. And it's, I understand that. And or for me, the worst one is when you know a person who's on the shortlist and you know that you went for the prize as well. And I have been the person in the past who's just turned around and said, oh, no, I couldn't find anything in time to enter that because I don't want them to think, I don't want to like drag them down from feeling happy about the fact that they ended up.
Oh, that's because you are nice people. This is evidence Charlie's nice.
And yes, 95 is excessive. Yeah, 15 should be for a long list. Yeah, this was the short list. I've been long listed before for stuff as well where they don't actually reveal who the long list is.
Oh, Richard's going. Bye, Richard.
Bye,
Thank you so much for joining us.
And yes, I'm glad that Alf is your favourite character as well, Callie, because I definitely put him through the ringer.
Like I said, Harold is my favourite character, but Alf is really good. And another thing I was going to talk about with Alf, and Kelly, do you want to talk about this as well? The food in the pockets. He's always got food in his pockets. I think I sent a message to you about this. Did I send a message to you about this?
No, yeah, we did talk about this privately because it just
made me laugh. I loved it.
Yeah, I think the thing was at the time, as I've said, men have really big pockets. And that was...
I'm not going to know. Wait, hold on a second. Right, I've just got to breathe a second and not laugh.
What?
Okay.
Is this just because I'm about to tell people about how I have had huge pockets before, and sometimes I've been carrying things, and so I put a sandwich in my pocket? Is that it?
Is that just casually carrying a sandwich in your pocket?
Sandwiches, bananas, yogurts, forks.
Oh God, Charlie, don't! Seriously, I'm gonna die here.
I'm serious. Like, this is one of the only things that was inspired by myself. I suppose it did also come from a little bit from Last of the Summer Wine when Compo would pull like a huge doorstop sandwich wrapped in newspaper out of his coat. But yeah, no, there have been plenty of times where I've like been in the hooded blanket, or actually I used to have a really great pair of jogging bottoms that had fantastically huge pockets in, and I put a can of something in one pocket and a sandwich in the other. So about me day.
That's really funny. Should we just tell everyone at 9 o'clock? So
yeah, in 11 minutes.
11 more minutes, and we're going to be. So you don't feel like we're holding you hostage.
Saying sayonara because last time we went on for so long and we really needed tea.
I think I was just practically passing out last time because I was like I think I was still COVID.
You were in the throes. Well, you were after COVID, but yeah.
Well, yeah. No, I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't like in the week of COVID, but I was still like feeling really. I felt awful, you know.
So, do you have a writing routine? No. I did have a writing routine when it came to Indisputably, Doris, which was simply because I had that much overtime. So once everything was finished at home, I would write from, at most, for 2 hours, from 11 o'clock in the evening till 1 o'clock in the morning. But if I was really tired, it would just be 11 until I passed out. And that's how the majority of Doris got written. But as I've said to everybody, the entire time when it comes to my writing, I tend to start off slow. And then when I see the finishing line, I hunker down. There's absolutely no point coming and trying to speak to me. And I just sit there until it's finished. And that's not these books because, well, that's what happened with Indisputably Doris. But in terms of Royally Doris, I also ended up hunkering down because I kept booking time off work to finish writing the book, thinking I was nearing the finish line, and I wouldn't get there. And then it was joy again. It's always joy. I told her I'd book the following week off work, and so I always see her on a Thursday because that's when the writers group meets. And how did she put it? I told her that I'd booked the time off to finish writing Royally Doris, and she said to me, "Well, you better, because otherwise we'll lose all respect for you." So that was it. But it was exactly what I needed. It was exactly what I needed because I went downstairs on the Friday morning, and at 9 o'clock I sat down, put the computer on, started typing, and headphones in, not even really listening to what was going on, just started typing. And my father calls it Charlie's wandering, because I start walking back and forth from the living room to the kitchen, and he wasn't there when I finished it. I didn't finish writing Royally Doris with the scene that I thought I'd be finishing Royally Doris with. I wrote this line, and I was like, that feels like the end.
It's funny, isn't it?
And I got up and I walked into the kitchen. I was like, I'm sure that's the end. And my mother was in the living room, and I was saying to her, I think I might have just finished it. And I walked upstairs, and I walked around and around my entire house. I don't know how many times.
Doing the wandering.
Yeah, doing the wandering, certain that I had finished it. And I was like, it's done. That was it. But it is that the final, however many thousands words, when I can see that finish line, there's no routine then. There's barely any sleep because I can't get it out of my head. This question works for both of us, Charlie, and I think you can answer this one.
Yes, I can, because I'm going to be I'm hosting a read along for it with Alice from Alice in the Giant Bookshelf and Jem from Gemma Books. We're doing a read along, not readathon, read along called the, have I said it already? The Plod Along. So yeah, and Charlie is actually going to be one of our first guests. So there's going to be a live show on my channel, Charlie Brick Reads, and I will be, yes, and Charlie's going to be nattering to us about the law, even though me and Charlie will be talking about it anyway, let's be honest.
Yeah, I think that Charlie isn't as hopeful as me. I am still hoping that I will have read about 15 out of the 16 book long list, and that I won't really need to do much reading, and that I'll have my rankings available and ready as soon as
bear in mind, Edward, Charlie is still doing the BookTube prize.
I am. I'm currently in the midst of reading another one of the books.
Which one are you currently reading? You cannot say.
I wasn't going to say which one I was currently reading. I was just going to say that we have found yet another one of the books that I am holding with great disdain.
And I can't wait to talk to Charlie about that later.
But for reasons that I will make clear. And they could also change as long as something is addressed within the book.
Yeah. Parents.
You must be proud.
Your parents.
My parents?
Yes.
Oh, my father only admits he's proud to other people.
No, sorry.
Oh, sorry, yes. Your parents and me must be proud, Charlie.
That's what I said.
No, and we Charlie. I sent Charlie a message, and she's now screenshotted one and sent it back to me because I apparently say every year that I shouldn't judge for it.
I have
Every year.
screenshotted it.
And I have it saved. It's not that the problem is that I have previously found favorite books of the year from doing this prize. And as many of the books that I find that I don't necessarily like, I still go back to the fact that I have found quite a few favorite books because
Are you judging the next round? Are you judging the next round?
I'm hoping to. It's if I get selected after bad mouthing all the books so much. But I don't know. I just
Edward, are you sorry, not changing the subject, but I was in press.
Yeah.
Edward, are you going to be reading the Women's Prize? What books are you reading? Tell us what books you're reading. Actually, all of you, tell us what books you're reading.
Sorry. What was I going to say?
I'm sorry, Charlie.
My favorite books. Oh, that was it. Because I also don't. I don't look at the book lists, so I often don't know what's coming out. You know, like I just bought one of the books I bought today, whatever that was called, which was which was a new hardcover.
Great Believers. No,
this was the yellow one that I sent you. That was about the friends that have been friends for 40 years, and one of them's just been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And this was at the charity shop.
It's called We All Want Impossible Things.
Yes, that's the one. And I didn't know that came out last year. I just thought I saw Rachel Joyce and Joanna Cannon had blurbed it on the cover, and I was like, okay, then I will give it a go. I shall be following along though. I have too many unread books, so I'm focusing on those. If a really good one comes along, may get it from the library. Yeah.
That's a good choice.
I always look to see what's available from the library first, anyway.
Yeah, I do too. That's got to.
So, yes. Yes.
Which was your favourite book from that series? Because Charlie's read all of those. Which is your favourite book, Charlie?
From that series, I don't think that it gets any better than the first one.
So the first one's your favourite?
Autumn, yeah. But
and started
Martin's I saw this because I thought you'd finally found Magnus Power Mouse. And as every single person knows, for years, well, I look at every charity shop for this book. For years, I thought that I must have dreamt Magnus Power Mouse. And one day, I'm going to find that book and I'm going to reread it. Because I loved that book as a child. And I've never found
I told you, I saw it on Aid Books. It came up on Aid Books. I think
No, that would ruin the quest, Charlie.
Okay.
I have to find it now. I have to physically find it.
I'm not getting involved in it.
Callie, I didn't know if he maybe at some point in his life he didn't. Oh, Alf, yes. Yeah, to be fair, that is also a very good point to have made because all of I'm going to steal that, Callie, and decide that was one of the reasons as well because Alf was around during rationing. And
you said, because he came from he always felt like not lower class because but you were saying that anyway, weren't you, a bit earlier on?
Alf and Doris definitely came from working class backgrounds or lower class backgrounds.
Working class is fine.
I think it's kind of referenced when I have Doris working at the co-op in the first book, and and also the way that Alf behaves. And they definitely married above their stations. But yeah, no, that's a very good point, Callie. There's definitely probably some truth in that, Alf. I'm not sure he always has to have a pork pie, though. I'm not sure he always has to have that. Autumn, I understand that. Won't be reading spring or summer. I mean, I read the seasonal quartet as part of the read-along hosted by Sarah at Hardcover Hearts.
You read the companion piece as well, didn't you?
Yeah, companion piece, no, goodbye, no. But the rest of the seasonal quartet, reading it as that group, I did get a lot more out of it than I would have done reading them on my own. But I also think that the first book is fine, and it's the best in the series, but I don't think it gets better than that. And
what's Kelly? What other than, I know you're reading Doris Ahoy, Kelly, but what are your plans after Doris Ahoy? Obviously, we're going to be all reading Royally Doris, but
yeah, we're all going to be girding our loins to be depressed for the next month.
I finished reading Someday Maybe by Onyi Nobulinelli. I think the name is. You're better at saying.
And I haven't finished reading anything, despite planning to spend this entire week reading.
But when I finished reading my book, I was practically brokenhearted. And I told Charlie, I said I was brokenhearted. Where we go?
Have you read The Beholder?
What? You went to read one of.
He read one of the short stories last year.
Oh, okay. Oh, darling. Sorry, I've done that again. Oh, don't jump on the bed, please.
We'll be ending the live stream soon. It's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm sorry.
We'll just need to find out whether Edward did read The Beholder.
Yeah. Did you finish? Yeah. Did you read the short story that Charlie's saying about? Sorry, Annabelle. I'm sorry.
But
yes.
Yeah. No, it is 9 o'clock. So
that's all right. We'll wait for Kelly as well to tell us what she's like, her book things, and then we'll wrap it up nicely and say goodbye.
But yes, we hope that you will all join us in reading Royally Doris in what month are we in, Charlie? March. We hope that you will join us in reading Royally Doris in March, and do be mildly prepared, because
it will break your heart.
Yeah, 4 of the 5 beta readers who read it told me they cried, so
I did.
So yeah, I apologize to everybody for this. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it
was called Erosive.
Well,
okay. Well, look out for The Beholder, because that was my favourite of Ali Smith's short stories. And I'm going to look at that one now. And Kelly, do feel free afterwards to comment on the video and just let us know.
Her internet's a bit slower, that's what it is. It's because she said she told us it was a bit slower.
And just let us know what you are reading, and if you are going to be joining us in March for the final month of the Literally Doris Readalong.
Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Thank you for everyone and watching in the future. We really appreciate you. And
thank you, Charlie, for coming along with me and helping chat all things Doris.
Bye bye.
Oh, yes. And I suppose I should say as well, until next time, that is all.
Bye.